I'd like to share with you today an issue I feel is vital to address as the Liberal government resumes its agenda this fall. I, like so many others, was recently shocked to learn that a Canadian Armed Forces veteran struggling with PTSD and a brain injury was repeatedly advised of medical assistance in dying as a solution to his suffering by a Veterans Affairs Canada employee. MAiD wasn't something the veteran had asked about or was even interested in, but even after asking the VAC employee over and over again to stop pressuring him into it, the employee persisted. I continue to learn so much from our veterans and their families that I've been honored to meet personally or by following and communicating on various social media groups. I was horrified when MAiD was first introduced, knowing the dangers it raises for those who return home from theater with invisible wounds that require such significant mental wellness support and continuous care. Veterans face a greater risk of suicide compared to the average population. And last week I learned of yet another suicide. And it made me so angry to know that instead of facilitating the most appropriate and restorative care possible, this employee chose to repeatedly broach a subject that was entirely outside of his or her and VAC's authority. Debbie Lowther of Vets Canada, who I deeply appreciate, said that it's like planting a seed within someone who's already struggling with their mental health or may even be contemplating suicide. VAC says, of course, that the conversation was inappropriate and shouldn't have taken place, but it did take place, and more intentional interventions are happening. If any good is to come out of what this veteran experienced, I hope it draws Canadians' attention to the normalization of assisted death in our country and just how rapidly it's becoming a fix-all solution, not just for end-of-life issues, but for treating illnesses among vulnerable people. It's only been 6 years since MAiD was first legalized. Protections and safeguards that were already inadequate have been stripped down even further by Bill C-7 in 2021. That bill allowed doctors to end the lives of those with disabilities and non-terminal illnesses. And if that wasn't enough, MAiD is scheduled to automatically expand even further in Canada to include those with mental illness in March of 2023. That is 6 months from now. Safeguards for the vulnerable are being stripped away as MAiD becomes more and more accessible. Waiting periods have been shortened, and the number of witnesses required to go through with the procedure has been reduced. We've seen assisted deaths rise exponentially, from just over 1,000 in 2016 to over 10,000 last year. 10,000 in Canada. As these numbers increase, so do the heartbreaking accounts of families who, like this veteran, have had a negative experience with the MAiD regime. In short, Canada is becoming the global case study on how not to implement an assisted death regime. Let's not forget that the same majority of Canadians who want empowerment in their end-of-life decisions also want Parliament to carefully weigh the risks of MAiD for those living with mental health issues, such as depression. 69% fear that depressed individuals could see MAiD as a means to escape dealing with the underlying causes of their condition. The slippery slope does exist, and Canada is rapidly spinning out of control. We must apply the brakes and take a serious look at not only the record of MAiD over the past 6 years, but at the rush to expand assisted death to many more vulnerable Canadians who are not facing an imminent end to their life. The Special Joint Committee on Medical Assistance in Dying is currently tasked with doing just that. Please, I urge you, write to the committee. Let them know that vulnerable people, including those with a mental illness, deserve full protections under our criminal laws. And on that note, if you would, take a moment to read ARPA Canada's submission to the Joint Committee, which I've linked in the description above. Let's not further stigmatize those with mental illnesses by suggesting to them that euthanasia is a solution to their illness. That will do nothing to improve Canada's record on mental health treatment. In fact, it would be a great step backward, just as the world is beginning to recognize the equal footing needed for mental health care and the need for robust, personalized support. Parliament has failed in its duty to protect vulnerable Canadians in need of help, and that certainly includes our suffering veterans. While medical science continues to make leaps and bounds, our lawmakers have made decisions that increasingly devalue life. I believe it is time to put a stop to these rapid legal shifts before they cause irreversible damage to Canada's social fabric, championing only the healthy and the wealthy. We must reject a culture of death on demand. Instead, please encourage your lawmakers, that's your members of parliament and senators, and your law interpreters, that's your lawyers and your judges, the Supreme Court, to make Canada a champion for suicide prevention.